He watched them before he struck. The lights would flicker out one by one in quiet California neighborhoods. The sound of crickets, the hum of sprinklers, the faint laughter of families winding down for the night. No one knew that in the shadows of those same homes, someone was watching. He would wait for hours hidden behind trees or fences. He studied his victims, learning their routines. When the moment came, he broke in silently, efficiently, mercilessly. He wasn't just a burglar, not just a rapist, not just a killer. He was all of those things and worse. For more than a decade, he terrorized the people of California. He changed names as he moved: the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, the original Night Stalker. But history would remember him as one man, the Golden State Killer, a predator so cunning that he vanished into ordinary life. And for over 40 years, no one knew his name. California, mid-1970s, the state was booming. Suburban homes were spreading across the Central Valley and the Sacramento area. Families sought safety, quiet, and sunshine. But beneath the golden glow of the American dream, fear was about to creep in. It began in Visalia, a peaceful farming town. In 1973, police started hearing strange reports. Break-ins where nothing of real value was stolen, just personal, intimate items, women's underwear, photos, trinkets. The intruder seemed less interested in money and more obsessed with the people who lived there. At first, the police brushed it off as petty theft, but then things escalated. The so-called Visalia ransacker began terrorizing homes almost weekly. Victims would return to find their drawers rifled through, photos missing, doors left open. He was taunting them, leaving subtle signs he'd been there, sometimes even rearranging furniture or leaving items from other victims' homes behind. Then came the first attack. He was no longer content to observe from a distance. In 1975, a Visalia family woke to find a masked man standing in their hallway. When the father tried to confront him, the intruder fired his gun. The father fell dead. And just like that, the ransacker vanished. No one connected this petty thief turned killer to the horrors that would soon unfold 200 miles north. By 1976, the East Area rapist had arrived in Sacramento. His method was chillingly consistent. He would stalk neighborhoods days before, watch couples, learn when they were home. Then in the dead of night he broke in, wearing a ski mask, flashlight duct taped to his gun. At first he targeted women who lived alone, but soon even couples weren't safe. He'd tie them both up, place dishes on the man's back, and whisper, "If I hear those dishes rattle, I'll kill her." The police were overwhelmed. The attacks came one after another. He seemed to know their every move. By 1979, the East Area rapist disappeared, but he wasn't gone. He had simply changed hunting grounds. Southern California, 1979. A new series of murders began. The same pattern: nighttime attacks, broken locks, couples bound and gagged, and women brutally assaulted before being murdered. At first, no one linked these crimes to the East Area rapist. The MO was similar, but the geography and brutality were different. He'd evolved. This new monster was called the original Night Stalker. He struck in Santa Barbara, Ventura, Orange County. Each attack was precise, silent, efficient. He would cut phone lines, pry open doors, and leave no fingerprints. Neighbors would hear nothing until morning. Police reports described scenes so horrific that even seasoned detectives struggled to speak of them. Couples found bound in their own beds, blood everywhere, signs of hours-long torture. He left clues, but none that made sense. He played with police. He called his victims after the attacks, whispering threats. Sometimes he called the police themselves, mocking their failures. One woman received a chilling phone call years after her attack. The voice on the other end said softly, "Remember when we played?" It was his way of reminding them he was still out there. By the early 1980s, California was living in fear. Women slept with knives beside their beds. Men set up makeshift alarms. tin cans and string, to detect intruders. Entire neighborhoods formed watch patrols. But the killer vanished again. No more calls, no more attacks, and the case went cold. For decades the trail grew cold, but the obsession didn't. Detectives retired, still haunted by the case. Files stacked up across jurisdictions: Visalia, Sacramento, Ventura, Santa Barbara, each with its own nickname for the same phantom. Then came the era of forensic DNA. By the early 2000s, investigators began testing evidence from old rape kits and murder scenes. And what they found shocked them. The DNA from the East Area rapist matched the DNA from the original Night Stalker murders. They were the same man. In 2013, the cases were officially unified under a single name: the Golden State Killer. Still, no one knew who he was. He had left no fingerprints, no witnesses, no trace. It seemed he'd simply dissolved into the crowd, an invisible predator who had once haunted an entire state. Then a breakthrough came from an unexpected place: a public genealogy website. Investigators uploaded the killer's DNA profile to an open-source ancestry database. Slowly, through distant relatives, they built a family tree, generation by generation, until it pointed to one man, a former police officer, Joseph James DeAngelo. He had once worn the same badge as the men who hunted him. He had studied their methods, their response times, their weaknesses. That's how he stayed one step ahead. DeAngelo lived quietly in a Sacramento suburb, a retired mechanic, a grandfather, a man with no public record of violence. But inside his home, detectives found trophies, items taken from victims decades earlier. It was over. After 44 years, the Golden State Killer had a name. In 2018, Joseph DeAngelo was arrested at age 72. When police confronted him, he muttered only one sentence: "I did all those things." It was a quiet confession from a man who had once inspired terror across California. In court, survivors faced him for the first time. Women who had been silent for decades spoke their truth, voices trembling but strong. One said, "You stole our peace, but you don't own it anymore." DeAngelo listened, emotionless, as victims recounted the horrors he inflicted. He showed no remorse, no expression, just the cold emptiness of a man who once believed he'd never be caught. In 2020, Joseph DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping, finally ending one of the longest manhunts in US history. He was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. And yet, the haunting questions remain. How many victims did he really have? How many lives did he destroy that were never recorded? For 40 years, he was everywhere and nowhere, a whisper in the dark, a phantom at the window, a man who blended into ordinary life, hiding behind the mask of normalcy. He lived among the same people he terrorized. He shopped in their stores. He smiled at their neighbors. The Golden State Killer wasn't a monster from the shadows. He was the shadow. Evil often hides in plain sight. It doesn't always come with horns or warnings. It comes disguised as the ordinary. The Golden State Killer wasn't caught by force or fear. He was caught by time, and by the persistence of those who refuse to forget. Justice can be delayed, but it cannot be erased. And somewhere in the silence of a cold prison cell, Joseph DeAngelo sits, an old man now, haunted by the same darkness he once unleashed on others. Because in the end, no matter how long it takes, the night always gives way to the dawn.